Each cell has the ability to reproduce, grow, respond to stimuli, and energy uses. That's what all of your cells in your body need to be able to do. They need to be able to grow more copies of themselves, grow themselves, respond to things around them, and use energy. That's what all the cells in the human body have the ability to do. And that is number 1 on your notes. All right, so here's slide number 2. You have more than 250 different kinds of cells in your body, but they're split into just 4 main categories. Epithelial, muscle, nerve, and connective are the 4 main types of cells in your body. So if you look at question or slide number 2, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, epithelial, muscle, nerve, and connective. The first type of cell that we just covered is epithelial cells. I know you guys all know, most of you guys are nurses, but epithelial cells are lining cells. Your skin is epithelial, your glands are epithelial. They line things. So if you look at the function of it, the function is, if you look at my notes, the function is it's lining, they're lining cells. And where do you find them? You find them in your skin and in your glands. That's the location. Anybody have tattoos in here? Do you know how they work? No? Do you know how they work?
No.
How do they work?
The ink is injected in basically between your skin, and that's how it doesn't just like rub off butter because it's inside your skin, and your skin is colored that way.
Exactly. So the ink is injected into your epidermal layer, not, it's injected underneath the main skin layer that's going to constantly grow off. So it's injected not in the epidermal layer, the dermal layer, which is right underneath the epidermal layer, so that it doesn't actually grow out because your skin's constantly growing and you don't want it to grow out. So they inject it right into your dermal layer. Let me show you. Next type of cell is your muscle cell. Muscle cell. Muscle cells make up your muscles, and they have the ability to contract. That's what makes them unique. Anybody remember what mitochondria does?
I think it's the storage.
It's the powerhouse, right. It gives you energy. It's going to give everything energy. So the muscles need to move. They need to be able to move whatever it is that they are. It needs a lot of mitochondria to be able to power that. There's actually a disorder called mitochondrial disorder, and children born with that they usually lead a shortened lifespan because you need energy for your heart to beat, your brain to work, breathing, moving. So they'll start to lose things as they get bigger, and you need more mitochondria, and they just aren't making it right. So they'll be on oxygen. Their digestive system isn't working right because it costs energy to do that.
So ability to move and rich in.
If we get most of our mitochondria stuff from our mom.
You get it all from your mom.
Okay. Do we like how does that relate to us with our mom? Like, do we have the same amount of energy or like what?
Yeah, if your mom, well, here's the thing. If your mom has had any problems with her eggs, the mitochondria for some reason genetically has been screwed up in the eggs, then you can have a mitochondrial problem, but your mom might not. But typically all the mitochondrial DNA, which tells exactly how to make your energy and everything, that's exclusively coming from your mom. Your dad doesn't do it at all, which is pretty cool, but a little creepy at the same time. Anybody know what rigor mortis is? What's rigor mortis?
Like whenever you die and your body goes hard.
Right. That's exactly what it is. Whenever you die, there's actually a period of time when you become, and this is why they call bodies stiffs, because they get very stiff, it's because the muscles have locked up. It costs energy to relax your muscles as well as contracting. You're not producing it. It's still in that contraction, so it contracts, get very tight, as if you were to sit there and tense your muscles up, but obviously you'd be dead and not tensing your muscles. I'll show you what I mean with rigor mortis. Not that one. Rigor mortis, if you look at that body right there, he's not holding his arm that way because he's dead. Rigor mortis is doing it for him. It happens within a very specific time period. It's also one of the forensics tools because they know it always happens. It's like 8 to 12 hours afterwards. So if you are still in rigor mortis, you know death happened between 8 and 12 hours before, kind of thing. So it's a good way to pinpoint when you died. A little creepy, but the third type is nerve cells. Nerve cells are your neurons. They send and receive information through electrical impulses. It's your nervous system. So the function is to send and receive information. It is your nervous system. All right, the fourth type, because I see you guys are so entertained. The fourth type, fourth and last type are connective tissues. Connective tissues are blood, bone, cartilage, and adipose, which is fat. That's the fourth type of connective tissue. After we get to this chapter, by the way, this is kind of all the cell biology part because everything else is specifically genetically inherited conditions. I have to teach you this stuff so that when I'm referencing it, you're not like, what are you talking about? All right, so yesterday the activity I had you guys do was talking about the food we're eating. The reason why I had you do that activity is because your cells are using all of that food in a very specific way. The first thing we talked about were carbs. Carbs specifically, I'm going to tell you, we eat foods that are rich in starch, so that's the breads, the pastas, anything with wheat, rice, are very rich in carbohydrates. What was it? Plants were also rich in carbs as well. So anything that's rich in carbs, we actually are going to use for energy. So we break down starches and we use it for carbohydrates. The second thing is going to be the function of it. You have to have carbs. You cannot have a carb-free diet. You can't. You're using it specifically for things. You can have a lowered carb diet, but you definitely don't want a carb-free diet.
What foods?
Carbs we use to give cells energy, and it gives structure to the cells. We actually are using the carbs to build the structure of our cells. That's why you need carbs. Even if you're eating a low-carb diet, you still got to get some carbs in there. I'm not saying you have to eat a piece of bread, but you got to get it in some other way. Your second macromolecule was lipids. That's what we were talking about yesterday. Lipids, lipids, lipids. Psst. Lipids are what we make from fat. We eat fat, we break it down into lipids. We actually do use the fat. We need fat in small amounts, but we do need it. What did lipase do again? Remember, everything that ends in an ASE is an enzyme. So yesterday, according to your activity, what is that enzyme breaking down? What is lipase? Fat, right. It's the enzyme that's going to break down fats. Some of the genetic conditions you're going to see on Friday, they don't possess certain lipases, and then it starts to build up in the brain, and that kills them. So this is slide number 8. It's found in things like oils. Meats also have fats in them. What do we use it for? We use it to make our hormones, provide insulation, and store energy. Your hormones are actually made from fats. The third macromolecule is proteins. This is probably one of the most important macromolecules you need to eat, regardless of whether you're a vegetarian or not. You have to have protein in your diet. It does everything. Your enzymes are made up of proteins. Your body is controlled by proteins. All of your connective tissue is proteins. Muscles are proteins. Muscle contraction is protein. You transmitting your nerve signals is all done through proteins. Allie?
How do vegans get protein?
Vegans get protein through, good question, it's not as easy. You can get protein through, what were some of the plants that you guys saw yesterday that gave you protein? Beans, the nuts, the peanut butter, that kind of thing. So that's how they get it, but it's harder to get. Like, I know people that were vegetarian and they tried to go vegan and it was really hard to maintain the amount of protein and they started to feel really, really crappy.
Diabetes and weightlifters.
Yeah. Proteins. By the way, if you are a weightlifter, you're trying to add on muscle mass, you are concerned with the amount of protein you're getting. So a lot of bodybuilders you will see is concerned with Daniel's leg. A lot of weightlifters will be very, very conscious of how much protein they're taking in. All right, so the last macromolecule I want to talk about is nucleic acids. Realize you are eating plants and animals which have DNA and RNA. You need to be able to break down and recycle the DNA and RNA, otherwise it's going to build up. And yes, I'll show you some conditions where that's exactly happening. They're building up, and it causes you to go crazy because it builds up around your brain.
What were the enzymes in protein?
The enzymes in proteins make up your enzymes.
Oh.
Yeah. You need enzymes. You need proteins to make your enzymes. Oh, this is cool. An enzyme, that's what we were talking about yesterday, technically is a substance that initiates or accelerates a chemical reaction without itself being affected. It means it starts or it makes it happen faster, something that's not normally going to happen. You need enzymes in your body to make all those processes happen. Digestion, nerve transmission, everything is what uses enzymes. I can speak. Technically, the process of what an enzyme is doing is called catalyzing. All right, enzymes. This is a cool picture that I like to show, simply because it's pretty effective. These are pieces of potatoes, and they've added an enzyme into it. But they've added the exact same enzyme. The difference is they've done it at different temperatures. So if you look at tube 3, tube 3 has chunks of potato in it. What color do you notice the water is?
Brown.
It's brown. It's like an orange-brown. That means that the enzyme is doing its job. It's breaking it down. It's turning the water orange because it's digesting the potato. If you look at when the enzyme, by the way, itself is in tube 1. That's the control color. You know it's breaking it down by the darker the liquid is. If you look and you, in fact, cool it off to 0 degrees Celsius, which is tube 4, what do you notice happens to the color of the water? It's yellow, so it's a lighter color. So what do you think the enzyme is doing?
Not breaking down.
It's not breaking it down as fast. It's breaking it down a little bit, not as much. Because the rule is the colder the temperature, the slower the enzyme's going to work. What about when you heat it at the 40 degrees Celsius, which is tube 5? What do you notice about the color? It's very, very reddish, dark color. What does that tell you about how fast the potato's being broken down? It's pretty fast. It's breaking down a lot of the potato because it's at a warmer temperature. If you notice, what's the temperature of your body?
40 degrees.
It's supposed to be 98.6 Fahrenheit. And it's because that's the optimal temperature for the enzymes. You're warm, they can work well. I mean, you're a mammal and all that kind of stuff, but enzymes like that temperature. If you look, on the other hand, to 100 degrees Celsius, which is much warmer than 40 degrees Celsius, that's the boiling point. What do you notice about the color of the water?
Pretty much clear.
Pretty much clear. What is the enzyme doing? Not breaking it down. You know why? You can boil the enzyme. It's called denaturing that protein. It melts it. So the enzyme can't do anything because it's melted. Does that make sense to you guys? So the rule is, the colder the temperature, the less the enzyme can work. The warmer the temperature, the faster it's going to work, unless you boil that sucker, and then it's going to die, and it can't do anything. There, make sure you're saving it. Make sure you're saving it. If you are digitally doing it, make sure you're saving it as a PDF, uploading it to Angel under the Dropbox. Because it is one of the pages that I will be grading. When I grade your notebooks, I collect them, I grade all the pages within that section.
Do you pause it every time?
I do, yeah.
So like if you went to laugh earlier, you paused it?
I paused it, yes. Genes. Remember we were talking about genes last chapter? Yes? No?
Yes.
Please tell me yes. Woohoo! Okay. So here's my chromosomes, which is holding my DNA. Here's one of the chromosomes, one section of the chromosome. Every number you see is a different gene. Each chromosome holds a lot of genes on it. Can the genes go wrong?
Yeah.
Yes, they can go wrong. One of the things that could go wrong, if you can't digest carbs, lactase. Remember, if it ends in an ASE, it's an enzyme. So what is that responsible for digesting? What is that enzyme going to break down? Milk, dairy. Specifically, what it's going to break down is milk sugar. Anything that ends in an OSE is a sugar. So if I mark lactose down, lactase is actually breaking down lactose, which is milk sugar. OSE is a sugar, and this is milk. So it's breaking down milk sugar. So if I was lactose intolerant, what am I missing? What am I not making? The gene, I'm supposed to be making, I have a gene that's responsible for making something if I'm lactase. So if I am lactose intolerant, it's because I'm not making lactase. So for those lactose-free milks, what is it? How do you get lactose-free products? What do they do? Bless you.
They take lactate out of it.
You would think that they would be taking that lactose out. It's actually much simpler than that. They add, what do they add?
They add lactase.
They add lactase. You don't make lactase, they add lactase for you. What if you could not break down lipids? Yeah, you're essentially, one of the conditions is called familial hypercholesterolemia. If something is hyper, what is it? Too much. What is cholesterol? It's fat, specifically in the blood, and emia is in the blood. So it's too much fat in your blood, and it runs in your family. That's where that familial part comes in. It's where the genes that are supposed to create receptors in the liver, remember I said yesterday that the liver is responsible for digesting out the fat? It literally lacks the spots to pull the fat out, so it starts to build up in your arteries and veins. It can cause you a heart attack. This one, mutated proteins. This is maple syrup urine disease. Maple syrup urine disease. Does anyone know why it's called maple syrup urine disease?
Probably smells like maple syrup.
It smells like maple syrup, yes. So when they pee, it smells like maple syrup. Yes. And the reason is because it's not very common. The reason is because people with this cannot break down certain types of amino acids. So it builds up, can't be processed out, and it accumulates in the bloodstream. So now you used to have urine that smells like maple syrup, which is a little odd. The problem with that, you would think it just smells a little funky. No. The problem with that is you can die from it. So there was a case, Tim as an infant had urine that smelled like maple syrup. He slept most of the time, and he vomited so much he hardly grew because he couldn't digest 3 types of amino acids. Amino acids are what make up proteins, so they accumulated in his bloodstream.